You know what? No. I'm going to go no now. Aaron Judge is not a Hall of Famer.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Walk Off. I'm Scott Belford, joined as always by the best co-host in the biz, Adam Mack, and we have a very special guest joining us in about 30 minutes here. Ben Nicholson-Smith, of course, Sportsnet analyst and writer, insider for the Blue Jays, is going to be doing about 25 to 30 minutes with us here. He's joining us at 1:05 Mountain Time, 3:05 Eastern. So if you are in the chat right now, of course, we are live on YouTube. We're going to talk a little bit of Blue Jays until Ben joins us, and then we're really going to delve into the weeds here.
We do have Ben Nicholson-Smith of Sportsnet joining us at the top of the hour. If you are joining us live on YouTube as we're recording this, get your comments in to the live chat. We will keep an eye on that. But full disclosure, we have collected most of our listener questions already in advance from our Discord and our Patreon. So best way, if you do want to get your comment or your question read and answered by any of our guests, Ben Nicholson-Smith or otherwise, join the Discord. If you're new here and you haven't already, that is 100% free to join. The invite link is in the show notes of this video, or if you're listening to it on audio, in the show notes as well. Join the Discord. It's free. That is the best place to get your comments and questions in for any of our guests.
Exactly. So while we wait for Ben to show up, Adam and I, of course, are going to talk the Jays. And if you do have any questions or would like to contribute, feel free to drop your comments. We do have both of our comment section open here and are keeping an eye on it, so we will look after it from there. Did we want to get right into this, Adam, or did we wish to quickly touch on Patreon? Let's get right into it.
Let's get right into it.
So this is a question for you, my man, and I meant to bring this up in last night's Long Toss, which turned out to be a phenomenal episode, by the way. Anthony Telford, nailing it.
Oh, yeah. Bringing the heat as he does. You know what? Honestly, that was one of our most heated discussions we've had in a long time. Joel was fired up about Shohei Ohtani.
Joel was fired
Craig
up.
was fired
man.
up about robo-umps.
Yes.
Anthony Telford is just fired up always. So,
man, did I ever get a kick out of every time something would come up that he just knew he shouldn't skew old school. He'd be like, listen, I'm almost 60, guys.
Yeah.
Of course, Anthony Telford, former pitcher for the Montreal Expos and the offseason pitching coach for Nate Pearson. So we picked his brain on where he felt Nate was at. And he was very candid. He was very honest, and he has been honest about Nate Pearson every time that he's appeared on the show. And one of the things that he brought up, and we kind of touched on as well, was that a couple years back when he first made his appearance on the walk-off, he mentioned that he was a little bit concerned about Nate Pearson and how analytically driven he was. The fact that he was so into driveline, so into the biomechanics of things, that he'd have his little nodes or whatever on his arms and muscles, and then it would be going to the computer after he threw a pitch and looking at his mechanics and seeing what his velo was and looking at all the analytics. And Telly was a little concerned.
This was a guy who was already throwing 100.
Yes.
Like, how much more velo do you need to add when you're 18 years old? Anyways.
And so that was one thing Telly brought up, again, 2 years ago. And now we have watched Nate struggle, and a lot of it seems to stem from that. Of course, we can't say that him getting mono had anything to do with that. He has had bad luck when it comes to bad tacos. I mean, we don't like to throw that I word around. Injuries here on the walk-off, we use the term bad taco, and Nate Pearson has had his fair share. So it's not really fair to judge too heavily this season, but it is interesting to see Telford mention that he's talking to his agent. He went golfing with him the other day. He's trying to convince Nate to come back to the facility there in Odessa, Florida with him and try and get back to basics, get back to where he was coming out of college ball, which was one of the most highly touted prospects in all of Major League Baseball, and a guy who was doing interviews on MLB.com where they were asking him stuff about what it would be like to be in the Hall of Fame. So there was so much heat on this kid. I think that at 25 years old, the spotlight has kind of shifted away from him. And maybe this is an offseason where we see Nate strip all the analytics, strip all of the driveline stuff, and just get back to what made him so highly touted, which was his big bad arm that touched 103, 104 miles an hour at times.
It is funny how the whole fan base has just moved on from Nate Pearson, and understandably so.
Yes.
But like, we're already hearing like, well, maybe Ricky Tiedemann can be our number 5 next year. Like,
At 20.
He's so young. It would just be so much easier to have Nate Pearson just work out. But that's a bit of wishful thinking too, I suppose.
Well, one thing that stood out about last night's combo is when you brought up the idea that Nate Pearson still has a ton in the tank, but might need a change of scenery. And boy, Telly was like, absolutely not. He does
Shut
not
that
need a
idea
change of
right down.
scenery. What he needs to do is get back to what made him a good pitcher. So, of course, we don't need to harp on Nate Pearson. We've probably already over-talked it. But it was kind of nice to hear from Anthony Telford, and a friend of the show, and just get some perspective on this young kid and where we probably see the direction he takes in the offseason. All right, I want to talk about this series in Baltimore here, Adam, before we get too far into it. Magic number down to 2. 4 games left for the Mariners and 3-game series against the Orioles with the Blue Jays here. Out of those 7 games, the Blue Jays, to clinch home field advantage, they need any combination of 2 wins or losses. Wins on the Jays side, losses on the Mariners. I don't know if I just made that about as clear as mud there,
Yeah,
but
I did not follow, but as long as it makes sense to you. Jays have the inside track, right?
what I'm saying is that they need any combo of a Mariners loss and a Jays win, and they need 2 of those.
Okay.
So if the Jays can win 2 games, it doesn't matter what the Mariners do. If the Mariners lose 2 games, the Jays can lose out and they're fine. Of course, that would be the least desirable way to go about it, but they are right on the verge. A disaster basically needs to happen for the Blue Jays to not have home field advantage. So my question to you,
Okay.
when you look at sports psychology and you hear all of that stock being put into playing the spoiler, right? This is what we always hear about those bottom-feeding teams, is that they can't wait to spoil the chances of their rivals in their division or their top teams. Do you truly believe in that? Like, just take a look at the Orioles right now. Set up the scenario here for you. The excitement and the over-accomplishment in this year, how well Brandon Hyde has managed this team, the standout performances of guys that maybe popped onto the scene unexpectedly. They were eliminated just 2 days ago. Do they actually have anything to play for going into Baltimore for these final 3 games? A youthful team, do you actually see them getting up for this?
No, I don't. I mean, I've been on the other side of this as a Jays fan for the last 20 years. I mean, other than the last 6, playoffs has never been a real consideration. So as a Jays fan growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s, spoiler in September is all we've ever had to play for. And it never works out that way. We would always still lose to the Yankees late in the year. We'd always still lose to the Red Sox late in the year. Baltimore, even if they get swept, is going to finish above 500 this year. And I think that is a major milestone for that
Massive
young team.
win for them.
They
Massive
won 52 games last year. They lost 110. They lost twice as many games as they won. An MLB leading 110 losses, tied with the Arizona Diamondbacks. So to turn that team around and to finish literally above 500 and
To win 30 plus more games than last year. Like, what else do they have to play for? I'm not saying that they're going to roll over.
No.
But when the chips are down, the Blue Jays have a lot more to play here. For a lot more to play for tonight. Right? Like, they could truly clinch home field advantage with a win tonight and a loss from the Mariners. And then they can shift into the who are we resting mode. What are we doing? We're preparing for the wild card series. What way are we going to line up our starting pitchers for the postseason? So there's a lot of motivation to win this game, right? And I by the way, in chat here, Mr. Ackmillan 111 shining a little positivity here. He goes, I predict Matt Chapman will hit the first homer of the postseason off the Budweiser sign on a 2-1 count in the second inning. Let's go. Specifics. I like that.
Very specific.
Very specific.
I think we're gonna have a good season, good postseason for Matt Chapman. I think he's gonna really ball out. I think. I don't know. We'll get into this later in the week. We do have some upcoming videos that I wanted to
tease them now.
preview or tease, shall we? So videos that Scott and I are going to cover over the course of the next week. We're going to rank basically every position player on a playoff team. Was that 12 teams?
Yes, sir.
So we're going to rank 12 first basemen. We're going to rank 12 shortstops, 12 second basemen. You get the idea. We're going to do that, rank every single position for teams left in the playoffs. We're going to preview and predict the 4 wild card series once those teams get cemented and who's playing where. And then each playoff team's biggest strength and biggest weakness, I think, will be fun to look at. Especially some of those AL or NL teams that we don't really look at too often. It'll be interesting to really deep dive a team like the Mets or the Padres or the Milwaukee Brewers. Here's one. Most important difference maker for each playoff team. Off the top of your head, most important difference maker for this Blue Jays team. And I want to put I don't know if this is the asterisk on it or the qualifying description of what I mean by that. But I mean, if this Blue Jays team is to have a long run, this is one player that needs to be playing their best baseball. If this player is playing their best, Toronto has the best chance at a deep run. And if this player is playing their worst, it is most likely devastating for the Toronto Blue Jays. So you got lots of contenders. You got Vladdy, you got George Springer, you got who's on your list? Who's your guy? Just the Blue Jays. Let's look at.
So there's a few ways to look at this. Obviously, I think it goes without saying, Vladdy is the answer here. If Vladdy is playing well, if George Springer is playing well, everything else kind of falls into place. But let's say everyone who should be playing how they're playing is playing how they're playing. The George Springers, the Vladdys, the Manoahs, the Bows are
Let's be
doing
honest
their
too.
part.
George Springer, this is the time of year he earns his paycheck.
It is. And
All
has
the
been
days he
as
gets
hot as
off
they
in
come.
June, July, and August. All we tell ourselves is that's fine as long as he shows up in October. So I just checked the calendar this morning. It is in fact October. So he needs to show up.
If Bo Bichette, Whit Merrifield, and Danny Jansen weren't completely tearing the cover off the ball the last month, we'd be talking about how impressive and how clutch George Springer has been. And he's getting lost in the weeds a little bit, but he has put up an excellent last 2.5 weeks of the season. He's going into the playoffs in playoff form. In George Springer playoff form, which is about as good as it possibly can get here. So he has been a little overshadowed, but we're already seeing playoff George, and you got to love to see it. I'm going to go a little bit outside the box here. Okay, I think that one of the biggest difference makers on this team very well could be Raimel Tapia, and for a few reasons. Number one, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. has yet to play a Major League Baseball game in September or October in this season. He's been on the IL for a month, and yes, he's looking like he's probably going to get a game or two of playing time in this Baltimore series. But we've already watched how difficult it is for somebody to come off of the IL and just have their clutch swing ready and going.
Yeah.
So Raimel Tapia, if he can continue to sort of be the guy he has been in September, which is slightly above average and a very good fielder. I think that we need to see this continue from him, and I think he really could be a difference maker when the game is on the line. He's a guy who's going to give you extra speed on the base path, bottom of that lineup when it comes to,
As Kevin Barker puts it, he's chaos on the base path, right?
He's chaos on the base path, and everything we just said about George, Vladdy, and Bo, with late in the game, if you can have those back-end guys getting on base, the Danny Janssens, the Whit Merrifields, the Raimel Tapias in that 7, 8, 9 hole in the batting order, it just allows ribbies for the big boys, right? It allows runs when you need it.
I'm with you there. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that was pretty much me wrapping up. Was just me saying Raimel Tapia is kind of.
I'm with you, Raimel Tapia. My proposal would be Jose Barrios.
Ooh, I like that.
I think, he is one of the hottest, coldest guys on this team all season long. I know the discussion for the last month has been who's your 3 guys in the wild card series, right? It's Gossman, Manoah, Stripling, in what order? We're going to need a 4th starting pitcher if we want to go play for the next 3-4 weeks.
Dude, once we're in the ALCS, there's no options. You need Jose Barrios pitching.
And we can't just be punting on Jose Barrios. We can't. If he's going out there and he's given up 4 runs in the first 2 innings, we can't have that. We're not going to go far just donating Jose Barrios starts. If he can even be competent, right? If he can just give us 5-6 innings of 2 or 3 run ball, right? I think we're in line to not set our bullpen on fire for the next game. Give your bats a chance. That's good, but he's got the potential to be 7-8 shutout innings. If we go into Houston and we steal a win on a Jose Barrios start,
oh, buddy.
Does that ever change the dynamic of that series? Game 1, Jose Barrios steals a game from Justin Verlander? What?
God,
would that
Houston
ever feel
scares
good?
Me.
Yeah, Houston scares us. I'll give you that.
The
Man,
Astros
I woke up this morning sweating. We are October 3rd today. The fun of September baseball is behind us. Now it's no more mistakes time.
It really is. A little trivia for you.
Okay.
Today marks 1 year since the Blue Jays won 91 games and still lost. Well, we all sat and watched the Boston Red Sox come back from the Nationals' 5-1 lead to eliminate the Blue Jays from the playoffs. It was a tough day, and am I ever thankful looking at today's standings and realizing we get playoff baseball, buddy.
Look, it's going to be nice. I remember back in February, March, previewing this team and our expectations. We all kind of figured this team would take a step forward. I figured we'd add a couple more wins. I think I projected 95-ish wins.
Yeah.
Maybe on the higher side of that. We're not going to get there. Barring disaster, though, we should best our record of last year with 91. We should get to at least 92, right? We're not getting swept by the Orioles.
I would say so. Last night they won their 90th game, so if the Blue Jays can take 2 of 3 against the Orioles, that guarantees that it doesn't even matter what the Mariners do. If they take 2 of 3 of the Orioles, it guarantees home field advantage, and it guarantees a better season than the 2021 outing. So,
and it's been another great September. I just want to say that too. Last year we had a
boys,
September to remember that really kept us going and kept us alive, even though we did fall short. For a lot of this season, we were projected for 85, 88 wins. We had another good September. We're getting hot at the right time. Last year, got hot at the right time, came up just short. We could have done damage in the playoffs last year. We watched the Braves do it. I think that was the hardest part of watching that Atlanta Braves World Series run, is just knowing that, all you got to do is get there. The Dodgers are intimidating, but if the Braves can take them out, we could take out the Yankees or the Rays, right? So, hot team. We've made it. We've officially clinched. Anything can happen.
We really appreciate all of you within the walk-off community. This thing continues to grow and become an animal of its own. It's a little bit overwhelming, but honestly, we love talking Blue Jays baseball and all the interaction that you folks are involved with us. Thank you so much. Discord, feel free to join it. That is always free. The show, or the link is in the show notes. You can follow us on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast, on Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. And if you are watching on YouTube currently and you're not subscribed, we'd really appreciate if you hit that subscribe button. All the best, everybody. Cheers.